now. Perfect. So that then brings us to our main event for today. Alan, I'm going to hand over to you. Maybe you can just start by telling us a bit about your operations at Latjeskloof, tell us a bit about how you came across FruitLook, and then you can go into detail about just how exactly you apply it on your farm. Okay. Thank you.
Hi. Dianca, tell me, can you see the split screen, my screen?
No, Alan, you're not currently sharing. So yeah, just remember to click on that little green share screen button and select that the right screen of yours with the Excel on.
Just let me know. Sharing screen is not coming on.
Yeah, we're not currently seeing it. So you're clicking on that share screen button, and then just remember to double click on the particular screen that you'd like to share, and it should come through. If it doesn't work, Alan, I think what we can do is you can maybe just email me that particular Excel file, and I can share it from my side if need be.
Oh.
But let's see if you can manage to share that from your side.
I'm just going to open it.
Okay.
Just going to open it again.
I'm going to make you host as well, Alan. Let's see if that works.
Mm-hmm. Can you see it yet or not?
No, not yet, Alan. No worries. I've made you host. Do you see that little green share screen?
Yeah.
You see that one, right? So when you click on it, what happens?
Okay, there we go. Okay. Share, okay.
There we go. There we go.
But
I can see that, Alan.
I just want to close this other little screen down. So many things up here. Okay, there we go. Okay, good. Well, briefly, I bought this farm in 1990, and it didn't have sufficient water, and I switched from waterlei to drip irrigation because some Israelis influenced me. And at that stage, nobody could actually introduce fertilizer into the water. So we had a problem as far as that was concerned. But what actually happened in those first 6 months was so staggering, because the trees that I actually put under drip irrigation were 9/10 dead. So I used them as an experimental block to see what would happen. Well, within 3 years, I tripled the production on them, and they were screaming with health. And with the extra money, I just developed the rest of the farm, putting in more drip irrigation and giving seminars on the use of drip irrigation so that there would be valuable fertilizer. And of course, that all came about very quickly as soon as people started realizing the advantages of drip, that the drip irrigation took off. So I've just had a passion for drip irrigation, but there are lots of unanswered questions. So when FruitLook came along, because it was well, it had fixed figures basically, and I got something from somebody else that wasn't diluted or enhanced or whatever, and I could work with those figures. I'm just trying to get us back onto video again so I can see faces. There we go. I prefer to see everybody. Okay, so So I'm just going to start off with what I currently do. So you can now see this Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah,
Now,
I can see that, Alan.
The Excel spreadsheet, I have one for, and what I do is I record, you'll see here on the left-hand side, there are the root zone and buffer zone. So I record everything that I get on my DFM probes. I actually record it onto the Excel spreadsheet. And then I have the irrigation that I'm currently doing. And then I've got the irrigation schedule I used last year. And at the top here where you see Transpiration, and I've taken March, which was last month. And I put it down so I can see the changes that I've brought about. Are they actually producing improvements in what I'm doing? So you'll see above that verlede jaar is last year's information. And I actually only started really looking at the evapotranspiration, which should be read as consumption, how much the plant is consuming. So with FruitLook, looking at every week, I would then set myself a goal to improve or change the schedule in such a way that I could see that I was getting an improvement. So that's as far as the spreadsheets is concerned. I just want to go over to the left. Then what I also do, I want to increase the size of the screen as well. So then what I actually did is I recorded from the weeks of the year, recorded down the parameters that I was using at the time. So I used biomass, the water use efficiency, evapotranspiration, the deficit, the actual evapotranspiration. And then I have a weather station. So I have my own evapotranspiration by the week. And then I record everything. And if it was an improvement on last year, I'd mark it as yellow. And if it went down on last year, I'd mark it as green. And in the beginning, I used to do scenarios where I would give split irrigations. For instance, I'd irrigate twice in one day, giving small amounts of water. And logically, people would say that your roots are shallow, 35 centimeters of citrus roots, that's where you want to irrigate. And I concentrated on that in the beginning, and I also concentrated on the water use efficiency. Now, the unfortunate thing about water use efficiency, it might say that the plant's flourishing and doing very well, but then your consumption and your evaporation isn't necessarily going to follow what you're doing. So what I started experimenting, well, putting down different scenarios, I've soon found that if you actually give a day in between or 2 days in between, and then give an irrigation, that in this year particularly, the consumption has zoomed up. It's actually increased dramatically. So from that point of view, I've worked out which the right scenarios are, and I'm getting far better consumption on what I'm doing. So just as a, okay, so that's the kind of record keeping. You'll see on our screen here, I have yellow, which is improvement. If I've done it in orange, it's more than. Okay, and then what I do is I have this all graphically displayed, because my problem with FruitLook is you want to see instantly. You don't want to go and call up FruitLook and look for it again. So I've set up graphs where I look at my water use efficiency. Now, in this instance, the water use efficiency in 2020 is the blue line, and you can see the water use efficiency in 2021 is actually worse. I actually haven't got a problem with that, because when you're actually measuring water use efficiency, you actually want to measure how many tons of citrus you get per cubic meter of water. And you also want to go further than that. If for instance, you're doing olives, you'd like to know what your oil production is per for the water. So that's the water use efficiency I look at. I look how many tons I'm producing, or how many kilos per liter of water. Okay, so the next graph down is the deficit. So you'll see, although the previous couple of years, you'll see I was giving, I don't want to go back to that other graph, but I gave less water more frequently. And then I found that in actual fact, if you irrigate deeper, a little bit beyond 35 centimeters, I work on about 40 to 65 maximum, because most of my citrus is on 35 centimeters of ground and the rest is clay lower down. But it also varies between the block. This particular block on that photo, it's right up against the mountain. So the top end of the block actually hasn't a lot of, it's got 35 centimeters and nothing more. But I've found that if I space a day between and I give a lot more water, the consumption's a lot higher. And of course, the deficit was also, so you can see the deficit improved dramatically from last year when I had a lot of highs. You know, it wasn't really efficient, and yet I got extremely good results. So it's just shows what actually happens. And then evapotranspiration, exactly the same thing happened. I found I was consuming more water. The tree was actually taking up more water, which should give you improved fruit growth. The biomass this year was also exceptional. And then one of the kind of eye-openers was less water more often. But as the season went away, I gave a little bit more water, but deeper, and a day, sometimes 2 days apart. Now, on this, I just want to go, yeah, that's that one. Okay, I want to go back to this, to these two sheets that I filled in. If you actually look at this sheet and this sheet, it can't tell you a lot, but what I've done is I've grouped it in months. So that actually below, look at what's actually happened. Now, the previous year, my biomass had gone up by 27%, improved by 38%, and then what is this one again? The deficit had also improved, and this year, if you actually go, the process even improved more. But looking at it on a monthly basis, I could see how much water I used, the hours I'd irrigated in total. And then I've recorded 3 years to see what has actually happened to the water use efficiency. So in this case, 2019 and 2020. This year, it's been slipping, but it's not far off the mark. But what is interesting is as I've improved, my deficit is a lot lower than the previous years. And the biomass is also a lot better. And then the consumption, the evapotranspiration, exactly the same things happened. The evapotranspiration has gone up. So the tree is drinking more water with a longer in-between cycle and slightly more water. Then I wanted to check on myself. So I did in the weekend. I quickly looked at the evapotranspiration, that actually how many millimeters deficit I actually got for the evapotranspiration according to the weather station, what I got. And the interesting thing is it's way down like that. So I'm using less water as well. Then I checked on the consumption, and the consumption's done exactly the same. It's gone, it's improved. Yeah, I just want to go across here. So I started using FruitLook in about 2000, and I think it is about 2018, 19 I started using. But you can see the production has grown consistently, and the trees have been a lot more healthy. Interesting thing, what also happened on that 35 centimeters of soil, all the books say that you should use about 45% of your root capacity with drippers, covered with a dripper. And the top of that block on Deanka's screen, this block is right up against the mountain. As I said, it's got 35 centimeters of soil. And I decided, because it was always dry up there and the fruit was small, I decided to put in a third dripper line. So the result of the third dripper line, I just want to go back. You'll see on this thing, yeah, I've got a third line. So I'm giving the third line also gets a portion of water. And then what I didn't tell you earlier on is I have a lysometer. I just call it an 8-loop gat, because basically it's a wheelbarrow 60 centimeters under the ground, which catches any excess water. So if we over irrigate, you'll immediately see it, pick it up the next day, and you can see what's actually happening. So I want to go back to this graph here and go and look at what the result of the third line was. So this was the first run of 2020. That's where the fruit count was. So in that year, I must say I went for production. I just said, listen, I'm going to see how much I can put on the tree. So I went for production. And you can see I had thousands of 125s, which the average price per carton is about 104 Rand. Then the next year, the first run. Now, the first run is the top part of the orchard. When we're harvesting, I harvest so that I'll get a run, and then I can check what improvement. First run, after I've done that third year, put in the third line, you can see the improvement was like that. And that was a really good return on investment, because the extra lines and the dripper lines wasn't a lot of money, and it covered it nicely. Then, just for interest's sake, I did a second run because it's lower down in the orchard and it hasn't got the 3 lines. And you can see even that didn't have the income that the third line's having. So yeah, the whole third line story is something to think about. And I am looking at it. There are places on the farm that can be improved. Okay, what else is there for you? Okay, that's about it. I just covered that one block. Yeah, this is on, I've a sheet like this for every block. It takes about an hour a day just to get all the information in, but it gives you lots to analyze when the FruitLook information comes through. It gives you the ability to go and sit and really look what you did and see how you can improve. Okay, that's it, I think.
That's great. Thank you so much, Alan, for sharing that with us. Extremely interesting and so cool to see all those improvements that you've achieved each year. So I'm going to open up the floor now for anyone who has any questions. You're welcome to unmute yourselves and just speak directly to Alan. If you want to just pop a little message in the chat, you can do that as well. I do see we have one question already here from Leon. He's asking, what year was this orchard planted, Alan?
You sound like a Caesar auditor. It was planted in, that was on, you see down here what it is, down there, 2000. It was planted in 2000. It was originally, I must say this, originally planted 5 by 2. It's now 5 by 4.
Okay. Thanks, Alan. Are there any more questions?
Yeah, for his interest, I mean, he wanted to know what they're producing at the moment, 131 kilograms per tree. And this year's crop, it looks as it's going to surpass that.
Sure.
Okay, I've got a couple of other little things that on that month sheet down here. I just wanted to talk about a couple of things, because if you know how many millimeters per hour your irrigation system is putting down, and you look at your deficit, you can quickly add in to make the improvements, you can actually add in the millimeters you're short. the following week. This was the beginning of March. I had this little thing happen, and there was a dry spot. I've actually drawn, sorry, the third line, I must say, this was the third line last week, but we had a pressure problem. The filters were kept on blocking, and then I found out that the guys weren't flushing it properly. So I'm going to see next week what improvement I get. But this is the third line section, this part of the orchard, the top part of the orchard. That was in January already. There was a problem there. I wasn't too worried. What I have found with this, looking at these pictures, is within Satsumas, it actually likes to be dry. And I got better sizes where it was slightly drier as opposed to slightly wetter, and better skin quality, because that's where the spacing of your irrigation also plays a big role, because your citrus tree, it likes water as much as it likes air. So if you're giving every day, you're actually smothering the poor tree and you don't get the absorption of the water. Whereas if you actually space it, then you get absorption. You might get a little bit of red color, but the price difference in per tree in the Satsuma orchard is like 100 Rand a tree. So it's very interesting and see what your color code is doing against what you're actually getting. Yeah, this was just the previous year. We had like 40 millimeters of rain after the drought, and it wet the whole orchard. And it's funny, there's a natural spring on that bottom side of the orchard, so it showed that up. Yeah. These little graphs, one must be careful of them, because it makes it look that there's a huge discrepancy, but in actual fact, I marked this one on the blue is 1.6 millimeters deficit per year, which in this case is probably an hour's water short, and over here it's to compensate. Okay.
Thanks, Alan. Very, very interesting. Very cool to see that visually, how you can also pick up those issues. I think that's my favorite part of FruitLook, is always just seeing the issues picked up visually in those spatial maps. Very, very cool. Any questions from anyone else? You're welcome to unmute yourself and have a chat with Alan while he's here. Please do.
Yeah. Another point, yeah, I actually keep a just for the month, the plotted DFM probes, and it gives you an idea of how you've irrigated that year and how you can improve. So I use a whole lot of things. I use historical data, the weather station, the probes, the lysometer, and then FruitLook to come to to make a good decision.
Yep. Any more questions?
Something I can also add to this is very valuable, is to get into your staff's heads that if they make a mistake, that you actually record that mistake, exactly how it happened or what happened, because then you can see when you're looking at your scenarios and seeing that, for instance, if you do a split irrigation, sometimes if you want to catch up, it's actually a really good way of catching up. But if they record exactly what you've done, then that mistake becomes like everything else. You learn more from your mistakes than you learn from getting it right. So it's important to get everybody on that page, that you record exactly what you did, even if you gave more. I mean, I make slip ups sometimes too, and I just write down that I've given too much water or too little. I think in this one I've got some little thing that says, I opened the wrong block, and so this one got too little on that particular day, but still had a positive outcome.
I see two raised hands. Gwen, you can go first.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
we can hear you.
Great. Very interesting presentation, and thank you. I want to come back to the question about how orchards are identified, using orchard as a location. If a farm is sold, and if numbering the orchard or numbering the locations is up to the farmer, what happens in that instance to the history of the data? So for instance, one farmer might say orchard A, B, C, D, E, and the new farmer might say orchard 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The other thing that is happening, if I can put it that way, is where farms are consolidated into a single farm. There's an example just outside Ceres right now where 3 farms have been consolidated into 1 farm. So again, the chances of maintaining the original coding would be different, assuming they were using the system. Is there a process for transferring that data, and is there a process for handing over training and everything else of the new sort of responsible entity, the new farmer?
Thanks for the question, Gwen. So how it would work is you would draw in a block, of course. The farmer draws in a block and he puts in his details. And let's say the commodity changes, or they consolidated multiple blocks, then you would have to go and redraw in the new block and put in the new details. The data that you get in FruitLook, it's constantly being provided, right? Each week. It doesn't depend on the details that you put in for that particular block or what data you're going to get. It's the satellite gives you the data for that particular area, and you're just putting in the details for that particular block based on what is currently is for yourself to know. Okay, this is this particular block, and that's the data I'm seeing for that particular block. So, I mean, if it changes, we just suggest that you redraw it and put in the new details that fits it better, just for you to understand the data, what you're seeing the data for. I don't know if that answers your question, Gwen.
No, that's very valid. I'm looking at a change in farm ownership. So I'm saying that if we take the discussion we've just had, the level of detail, the level of application, the level of understanding is phenomenal. It's impressive.
Yeah.
What if that farm were to be sold, and how would the new farmer get up to that level of capability, competence, and understanding and access the data? Because what certainly, coming from a traceability perspective, one of the issues that we have always had is that a new farmer will renumber the blocks according to the way he wants to number the blocks, and you lose that history. So that's where I'm coming from, is a change in ownership of the farm, and whether that transition process is formalized.
I get you now, Gwen. Thank you for just clarifying. So no, there's no, there's no formalized transfer strategy. It depends on if what in my mind how it would work if ownership is changed. Then the original farmer has an account on FruitLook, and they have their own login details. So only they can access whatever they did in FruitLook. What would happen is the new farm owner would firstly need to register himself, or if he for some reason has a good relationship with the previous owner, then you can actually share blocks in FruitLook amongst FruitLook users. So if you're a farmer and you have a consultant or someone else who'd like to share this block that you've drawn in on your profile, they firstly need to be registered on FruitLook, but then you can add their email address and you can share any block that you want. But I mean, if that for some reason that relationship is not there, then the new person would have to start from scratch and draw in the blocks and everything from the start, and then they would kind of be in contact with us as a FruitLoop team from Blue North, because we're the implementation partner in South Africa, and we would then go through a training process with that person once they've reached out to us, just to tell them about what FruitLook's all about, how to
and
use
start
it.
again. No, that's
Yes.
fine. I will pick up the discussion separately. Where I am focused right now is on justifying the carbon counts, on meeting the carbon counts, on the SDGs and all of that sort of stuff. And that is going to impact, the new legislation is going to impact on existing farmers, and we can't necessarily afford to lose that detail. But that's not for now. I will pick up separately. And Alan, thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Gwen. Appreciate it. Okay, then Leon, I saw your hand up as well.
Thanks, Alan, for the information share. Just maybe two questions. Is one, have you done any replacement of your probes according to this data that you found on FruitLook? And then when you go out into your orchards, do you navigate to some of the red or yellow or blue areas to do soil moisture assessments or more in-field assessments? And how do you do that?
Yeah, well, can you hear me? I'm not on mute.
I can hear you.
No, well, I walk, or my intern walks the orchard every day. So I walk through the orchards at least every second day, but I basically walk it every day. And I've over the years, I've placed the probes in the most appropriate spot, also to walk the shortest route, because you don't want to spend unnecessary time traipsing all around the farm. It's only 14 hectares, so it's a good morning walk. Yeah, I have moved probes around when I felt, listen, I'm not getting a good reading, or there's something wrong, but I've got one probe per hectare, basically. And then, yeah, I cross-reference, with these pictures. I'll choose a spot that's suitable. So I have used the FruitLook thing to do the placements. To check the other moisture contact, I physically look at the tree. I actually take pictures with my cell phone and also stick them on the spreadsheet. I mean, yeah, my daughter does IT work, and she said she mind boggles at the amount of information I have got. But I mean, it's good to visually see what the trees were looking like, what crop they had on that particular month, that particular year, so that you know what you're doing. One of the most interesting things that I didn't really touch on is it teaches you the whole process teaches you the physiology of the tree. So I've got the whole, on the graph, I've got the whole season plotted so that you will see from now on April that there's flower initiation and induction. And you need to stress the tree slightly now so that you get a good flower. Now, last year, I got the deficit down to 0, and I was unfortunately very sick at that stage. So all our information, I just carried on irrigating, making the deficit near to 0. And the result was the trees flourished and they grew beautifully and they were healthy, but there was no stress. So this year, I had no flower, or virtually no flower, on my satsumas and the early clementines. So, and that gave me a big wake-up call because, of course, you can't not have fruit. Yeah, so I learned a lot through that induction, and I actually I have a little tab that says induction, and actually, as I plot it, it plots the induction, and I've set myself a standard that I don't want a deficit below 4 during this time and during April and May, because induction in citrus happens when you go below 25 degrees centigrade. But that is not the only factor. You have got to apply what they call regulated deficit irrigation. So you'll apply it so that you can get the trees to set. The biggest example of that is if you have what they call a clem late. They ripen in July, and nobody could get those things to set. And Professor Martinez came around. He was looking around the farm here, and he couldn't speak English, but he just wrote down X/2, and X said scenario, and I had greenhouses at the time, so I understood that he wanted me to halve the irrigation, and I halved the irrigation, and won't be tired, we immediately got a crop on the trees that we'd halved the irrigation. So that is the way of setting up a scenario. But to do that every year for every orchard is a bit of a nightmare, because you've got to keep shifting your lines to a new block. But you understand that that's that half x and 2x. So you will give, if you're irrigating 1 liter per hour, call that x, then 2x would be, of course, 2 liters per hour, and half x would be half a liter per hour. And you'd run that scenario, and then you could see. But that's but that's how I started. And I actually understood the induction and all of that right in the beginning. And then I looked at FruitLook, and I thought, well, yeah, you can do it over the whole orchard. So I would play around a little bit with stressing it here and stressing it there, and seeing what results I got. I mean, split irrigations for irrigating is a no-no. It gives you really poor results.
Perfect, thank you. Maybe a question to the FruitLook team. Alan, you mentioned that you changed your plant density. I think you said you went from a 5x2 to 5x4, or other way around. But will that have, and what effect will that have on the images you see on FruitLook? And is that picked up in the variants on FruitLook as well, or not?
Well, thank you for the question, Leanne. Yeah, so currently we have a resolution of 10 by 10 meters. I think my colleague, Jessica, she's not here, they're more on the technical side, but we will provide, you can load a block of 0.1 meter by 0.1 meter, and FruitLook will be able to provide you with data regardless. It's just obviously better resolution, better, more detail. But I can put you into contact with the guys from eLeaf, who's actually the company in the Netherlands, who are responsible. They own FruitLook, and they created the tool, and they're responsible for processing the data. So they have a bit more knowledge about the technical side. Yeah, I can put you into contact with her if you have more detailed questions.
Leanne, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear.
I just want to say something about, those were the days when tight spacing was the kind of fashion.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I've got some Satsuma trees that are planted, they planted 7 meters by 6. And I took off 327 kilograms per tree off them last year, okay, which is a massive crop. That's 88 tons per hectare. Now, again, I want to add there that to have that type of crop, at the time I said to the intern that I had with me, I said to her, I hope I don't regret not spraying, getting rid of some of the fruit, because it was such a big crop. And then we got that heat wave in March while we were harvesting, and I basically lost the whole crop because the trees were overloaded. So, but to get back to the spacing, the conventional spacing, I wouldn't go closer with citrus than 6 meters. Although when you're starting, when I started on this farm, I planted them 4 meters apart, but they were tram lines, so I could take out one. And that orchard today is standing 5 meters apart in the row, but it's too close. The things eventually, because this farm hasn't got that amount of water, I said to myself, listen, give yourself space, and have more sunshine, more air. Yeah, so I've done that. I've gone away from the close spacing. I do more traditional planting.
100%. Thanks, Alan.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Leanne. Apologies, just a correction from my side. I said you can draw in a minimum of 0.1 meters, which is insane. It's actually 0.1 hectares. Apologies for that, guys. But yeah, any other last questions for Alan? Everyone happy? You're welcome to raise your hands and have a chat.
The lady was asking that the question about orchards. I know that Caesar, when you register an orchard, when you register an orchard, you register under a PUC number. So that PUC number would stand from year to year they would use it as a reference, I'm sure, that they would go back and say, well, if your PUC was 163, the next person that takes it over would probably get the same orchard given a different reference, but that reference is so. But as far as information that the farmer has gathered over the years, you know, I don't think people worry about it. Some people give the information freely and others, they take it with them.
Alan, yeah, thank you. The PUC is also dependent on who registers as a food business operator. So if the farm ownership were to change, that could be re-registered. Where I very much am coming from is with the sustainability data that is required. That takes us back to accurate data at ground level. And we are seeing increasing use and standardization of identification. So it sort of comes back to that stage, and in particular, the continuity of the data becomes important. So it was really just checking. I do appreciate what you are saying. I think the other thing about the PUC is that for horticultural products, you are required to register food business operator and PUC. That is not required in all industries. So for instance, if I've got 1 hectare of or 1 block of table grapes and 1 block of wine grapes, I could have 2 different farm identities. If I put a cow onto the farm, I have another. If I milk the cow, I have another. If I put a chicken onto the farm, I have another, and if it lays an egg and I sell the egg, I have another. And that is a hangover, that fragmentation is a hangover from when it was a regulated industry. So the challenge is to say, with the data coming from ground level, how do we consolidate all of this? And we need a common identifier. Thanks.
Thanks, Gwen. Thank you very much, Gwen. Very, very interesting. Yeah, thanks, Ellen. I think we've come to the end of the webinar now. So yeah, just a very big thanks to you, Ellen, for your time and for just showing us in detail how you're using FruitLook. And I really hope that everyone who joined us today did learn something from that. But if you guys do have questions, let me just, I'm going to share, I'm just going to reclaim the host here, Ellen, and just share again my screen. So if you do have any questions after this, please do feel free to, that's our contact details. I hope you guys can see that on my screen, but just our emails and contact details. And we can also put you into contact with Alan as well if you have any specific questions that you think of afterwards. And we will be hosting more of these commodity specific webinars going forward with some other guests. And hopefully no more technical difficulties. Today was quite a bit of a learning, but thank you guys for your patience and for still sticking with us. We really appreciate it. And I do hope you all have a very, very lovely day further. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.